Hey, thanks everybody coming, both online and here in the room. For those of you here in the room, please make sure that you sign in, and we'll make sure that we get this presentation out to you. If you've logged in online, we should have your emails, and we'll send a copy of the presentation as well to you guys so that you can have it. The people that are on the webinar, your phones are muted, but you can ask a question in the dialog box, and we'll make sure that gets asked as well. But it also helps us so that somebody doesn't put us on mute, and then everybody gets to hear your wonderful hold music. Thanks again for being here, and Mark will go and cover a lot of information on GP.
So we're going to do 50 tips in 50 minutes. So you can all do the math. It's 1 minute a tip. It goes pretty fast. Before we get started, though, we just really want to encourage folks to share, tweet, Facebook, let folks know you're not like on vacation. You're here and you're working and you're learning some cool stuff about GP. So this is a really fast presentation. It's designed to give you a whole bunch of stuff at once, and you're going to see something cool and you're going to try to remember it, and you're going to try to write everything down, and that's not how this works. So the way this works is the tips are numbered from 1 to 50. Just scribble down the number of a tip that you said, hey, we might be able to use that thing. And then we have full detail. It's available now at dynamicaccounting.net, and Jeff will email it to you as well. So we have full detail behind the tips, how to do them, more information, all that sort of thing for you to be able to take back. So you don't have to get everything now. We want you to relax, have some fun, learn something, see something that's interesting, not necessarily kill yourself writing down every single tip. Is that fair enough? Okay. All right. So we're going to start off with something easy, working with some dates in Dynamics GP. I'm going to switch this up. All right. So you start working with dates in GP. Everybody's going to use them for something or other. And I click the button here, and I can pick a date. So that's kind of cool. But what if I'm doing some work a couple of months back? Maybe we're making adjustments, that sort of thing. If I actually click the month here, I get all of the months. Really, I get a year's worth of months here for me to be able to pick through, which is kind of cool. If I need to pick, February because we found a mistake or need to go fix that, I can do that. What's interesting is if I click this again, I actually get a decade's worth of years. So I'm not sure why you would want to go back a decade, but if you do, we probably need to have a separate conversation around that. And one more little fun thing, we can actually go back 100 years with this. Thank God. I knew that's what you wanted. I did have someone once who had owned a piece of land. The corporation had owned a piece of land for more than 100 years. But they weren't making entries 100 years back based on that piece of land. So I'm not sure why it's there, but it's kind of fun to show off to folks. But it is really nice and easy to pick a date this way, and even to be able to go back without necessarily doing a whole bunch of scrolling back and forth. Sworn I fired that off. All right. So one more thing. As I do this, I open up a lot of windows. And so there'll be a lot of things sort of floating around in GP. Got this window open here. Clean up some of that. Some days you find yourself, you've opened up a bunch of windows and you just want to kind of close them all and reset where you're at inside of GP. It's really easy to do. You just pop up here and you say that you want to close all windows. It'll close all of the open windows in GP. If there are some that are waiting for a message from you, if they want to save, do you want to save or delete, those messages will pop up. It won't just close them out. So those things will pop up along the way as well. All right, so number 3, there's a set of professional service tools inside of Microsoft Dynamics GP. These are free for GP 2010, and they are included for GP 2013. We'll look at a couple of them as we work our way around. I just want you to know that they're here for starters. If you don't have this in 2010, let us know. We can get it for you to get it installed in GP. And basically, they're available to do a bunch of kind of maintenance things, or what we would think of as maintenance on our system. So here's one that I really like. And these are the master triggers. So if I come in to RM master triggers and hit next, this kind of works for everything. So let's say that I have multiple companies in GP, but I really only have one set of vendors that we all use together. So whenever I enter a vendor in one company, what I would really like to do is have that vendor automatically appear in another company that I own. Okay? Well, I can do that. So here I have a master company. I pick a company I want to roll it down to. Master can be just wherever I'm going to enter my vendor first. Replicate would be where I want to roll it down to. And then I check the vendor box. And now every time I add a vendor to a particular company, it will roll it down to the other company that's been selected here. You can have multiples of these. I could have 10 companies in this list, and it would roll it down to all 10 of those companies. We can also do this with customers or with accounts. So I've seen some people who, well, I did it. We had what we referred to as a U.S. company and a California company. I know that implies that California is not part of the U.S., and when you get to liability, it's not. It's some other thing. It was separated out for liability purposes, but we had a single chart that was identical between the two companies. So every time we added something to one, we could roll it down to the other. Like I said, we'll look at a couple of these as we kind of work through. Yeah, that's because I don't have anything else in there. All right. There we go. All right, one more thing that's here in the professional service tools is the ability to copy companies. And where I see this happen is, we've actually had this with a couple of folks so far late last year, is they said, we have a company in GP and we're opening up a new operation. And what we would like is our new operation to have many of the same things that our old GP company has, but we don't want all of the data. We just want an empty company to start working with. And so the copy company tool will let you do that. You pick a source company and a new destination, and you can choose what you want to send over. These are all master records. So for example, I could say I want to send financial if I want to bring over my chart, and maybe payables if I also want to bring over my vendors. And so now my new company has my chart and my vendors, but nothing else. I've now got a blank company to start working with and setting up, that type of thing. All right, I know we've had some interest in the web client, so I just thought I would show off as folks start looking at that harder. One of the things that you get with the web client is the ability to manage your sessions. And so the web client has some terminal server-like capability to it. So in this case, now I'm running a bunch of stuff on here, but in this case, I can add an additional 4 web client sessions to this particular machine. It actually tells me how many I can manage. It shows me folks who are logged in here, and if I needed to kill their session, I could kill their session from here. Then they could log back in via the web client. Okay, apparently I have 2 of these running. I don't even know how I did that, but that's okay. All right, how about unit accounts? So unit accounts are non-financial accounts, meaning they hold things like head count or square footage or those types of things. And traditionally in GP, unit accounts behave like balance sheet accounts. Debits increase them, credits decrease them. We use them for reporting. We use them as a basis for allocation. So if you want to allocate costs based on square footage or based on number of people in a department, you'd use a unit account for that. So typically, though, they don't clear at year end. And we have some folks who use them for things that they're tracking, and they would like them to clear out at year end and be able to start over with 0, sort of like a P&L account. Well, with GP 2013, you can actually check the box clear balance during year-end close, and it will clear this out as part of the year-end close process and reset that particular unit account. The nice thing is we can do it by account. We don't have to do it globally one way or the other. This is one I really liked. I worked with a company who they had a lot of accounts. They were publicly traded, and they had something of a mess from an audit standpoint. And what they were really trying to do was get control over their month-end reconciliations and balance sheet roll forwards. And in order to do that, what they ended up doing was taking one of these user-defined fields here for all of the accounts that needed either a balance sheet roll forward or some type of reconciliation that someone was going to prepare. And they put the name of the person responsible right here for this account. And then at the end of the month, they simply pulled a smart list that gave them every one of the accounts they were expecting a reconciliation or roll forward on. It gave them the person who was responsible, and then they had a list in hand to be able to manage that from. The only challenge is if somebody actually leaves and you need to reset these, we could help you reset those through SQL, or through some other tool. There are a couple of tools that can import into this. The reality is, hopefully you don't have huge turnover of folks who are doing your balance sheet reconciliations. Hopefully those folks are fairly stable. But this actually worked pretty well for them to help get control over the month-end reconciliation process. Another thing we really want to, I really love the way this works is when you're looking at accounts, there's an account category here. And this category can actually be used for reporting. So FRX and Management Reporter can both read this category. And for folks who have kind of a messy chart of accounts, no one ever admits to building a messy chart of accounts. We all inherit it from somebody else who built a messy chart of accounts. You can use account categories to pull those things together in your reporting without having to build a giant octopus. You're able to say, what I want to do is I want to have a category called cash, and I want all the reports that have a category called cash in this section of my balance sheet. And that way, even if someone screwed up and cash has a number that doesn't fit anywhere else, by building your items off of account categories, you can actually make it really easy to build roll-ups in tools like FRX, Management Reporter, or even Microsoft Excel. All right, this one I'm taking complete credit for. Microsoft has a tool called Microsoft Connect. What you can do with Microsoft Connect is you can go and suggest product features for Dynamics GP, and you can go and vote on product features that other people have suggested for Microsoft Dynamics GP. So this is one that I suggested, and I got all of my friends to go and vote for it, and now it's in the product. So if you like this, it's all my fault. If you hate this, we're going to pretend someone else put this in. The bottom line is this. It sort of looks like this. I have an account here. Use this for another presentation. It says it's named Convergence 14 Attendees Rocked. Okay, it doesn't really matter what it's named, but it's named that. And we've actually got the naming is coming from the segment setup names. So we've named each of our segments in GP and set them up, and we auto-name our chart of accounts based on that. So in this case, I'm going to change this account. This is account this. Now, if I change this to save that, it's going to ask me, do I want to roll it down? So I could roll it down to all departments, for example. If we've changed the name on a department from, corporate to admin, we could then roll it down and it would flow through our chart and be able to update those all the way through. So when I say yes, I want to roll this down, I come back in here and I look at this item, pull it back up again, and now the name has been changed. It's been rolled all the way through my chart for reporting purposes there. See, I think that's kind of cool because I keep bumping into folks who, oh yeah, we changed our department name and we want to, change it all the way through the system, those kinds of things. All right, let's look at a couple of GL pieces. When we're working with accounts in GP, let's go up here. So I've got an account. Maybe we're not going to use it anymore. So we come in here and we check the inactive box. And what that does is that prevents people from entering transactions into this account. There's one exception to that, and every so often we bump into the exception. So I figured I'd mention it, that way you know. The exception is if this account already exists as a default somewhere, it will continue to work even though you check the inactive box. So if I've said I have an expense account that I've set on a vendor and it is their default expense account, I still have to go and find those and remove those defaults. Checking it here will really prevent people from entering it on a transaction, but it will not prevent it from defaulting on a transaction. So that's important because I've had people take like 3 days to chase something down only to realize that that's the way it works. So we want to make sure you get that up front. Segment names. So when we set up GP, we can set up our segments for the chart. And we can actually give them a name here. So in this case, this is division, account, department. And so then when we're looking at smart lists and other types of reporting, we can actually show division, account, department, which means something to folks rather than segment 1, segment 2, segment 3, which may or may not mean anything to anyone. If you have something that says segment 1, that might, but I actually had folks with 7 or 8 segments, and by the time you get to segment 8, nobody knows what any of them mean by that point. So from a setup standpoint, if we change these to be the actual name, it really helps a lot as folks are kind of working their way through the system. All right. This one is just a little fun. So in Dynamics GP, when we set up a chart, we typically use a dash to separate the accounts. If you have a really long account, it won't fit in the window, and we can turn on little scroll bars that will let you scroll back and forth. But I've had at least one person who was right on the edge. They had one character that was falling off. They really didn't want to turn on the scroll bars. So we changed this to a dot, to a period, and that actually shrunk it enough to be able to fit in the window. So it doesn't have to be a dash. It can be something else, and there are pros and cons to kind of whatever you put in here. But part of the bottom line of that is if there's something that's just not working for you, raise your hand, and we may have a creative solution along the way, too. All right, so budgets. So Dynamics GP 2013 supports the ability to merge budgets, and it works like this. Let me open up my budget here. And so I've got a budget, and I can say that I want to combine budgets. And so the one that I opened up is really my master budget ID. I'm going to put things into this budget. And then the bottom one is what I'm going to combine into that. So we'll pick a demo budget here. So this will take the amounts from budget 4, and it will combine them into budget 2008. If there are any accounts that are identical between the two, it will add those 2 lines together. That's just the way it works. I don't recommend checking delete budget. I would make sure that everything worked the way you expected it to work before you delete that budget, but you can always come back after the fact and do that. Oops. There we go. Currency updates. If you're running multi-currency and you have different rates, there's actually a free tool from another MVP. His name is Mohammed Dowd, and his company is Dynamics Innovations. And it will go out to the web using Yahoo Finance and bring in currency rates for whatever currencies Yahoo Finance supports and be able to update your tables based on that. So it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty easy to use. We've got a number of people using it. And if you're looking at multi-currency stuff, it's a nice free tool. All right. Electronic reconcile. I love the ability to reconcile electronically, get a file from your bank, upload it, have it check off all the stuff for you, and you're done. GP 2013 has added support for a BAI file, as well as BAI 2. But just to give you an idea of what it looks like, because it's really easy here. When you go to do the setup in the configurator, we simply say that we're building a reconciliation file. We set the format type as BAI, and it does everything else for us. It brings in all the setup pieces we need in order to support a typical BAI file. There are 1 or 2 little changes to make it BAI2 compatible, but really that's the majority of the setup for setting up electronic reconcile with BAI. There's a couple of codes that need to go in from your bank to tell it what is what's a check versus what's a deposit. And after that, you're reconciling. Speaking of reconciling, we can also reconcile bank accounts with no activity. So let me give you a quick kind of bridge for the two of these. So you'll notice this box pops up that says, do you want to match deposits? This is part of the electronic reconcile. If I had a file, it would be doing that matching right there. In this case, I have an account with no activity in it. Maybe it's a deposit account. Maybe it's an account that is really inactive, but we're not ready to close it yet. Doesn't matter. I still want to prove to the auditors that every month I'm going in and I'm proving that I tried to do a reconciliation and the bank statement was blank and that sort of thing. So when I'm done, I can click Reconcile, and it's actually going to warn me. It's going to say there's no transactions to be reconciled for this checkbook. If I click Continue, it still prints all of the reconciliation reports. So now I've got proof that, yep, I really did go do this thing. And we can put it with our files and have it for the month-end details. All right, checkbooks. So I know there are still lots of people out there with checkbooks that have names like Wachovia Operating, even though Wachovia has been gone for a little while. The reality is it's kind of hard to change checkbook name. Well, this is one of the places where the professional service tools comes in handy. So here in the professional services tools library, I can just click checkbook modifier, click next. It's going to say what's your old checkbook ID and what do you want the new checkbook ID to be. So that'll let you clean up some of those and really make those accounts mean what they're supposed to mean. Saw some strange ones the other day, like customer deposit account was actually what they were using as operating because they'd moved their accounts around, and it helps a lot if they really say what you use them for. All right, auto-numbering fixed assets. GP 2013 added the ability to auto-number your fixed assets. It's really straightforward here in fixed asset setup. There, company. We simply say that we want to auto-generate the next asset ID, and we can put in a lead here if we want some letters or something in front of that, and it will just continue generating asset IDs from there. R2, which is coming out before summer, is the best I've gotten out of them, will allow you to actually auto-number them differently by classes. So if you want your furniture and fixtures to have one numbering scheme and computers to have another, you can actually separate those two. It's one of my favorite things that I found in GP. It's one of my favorites because I didn't have it in GP9 as a controller, and so I'm a little jealous, honestly. So this is Smart List, ad hoc reporting tool, and one of the things that we can do with fixed assets now is that if I come into fixed asset reporting here and go to columns and pretty much add any column that has a count at the end. There's a couple of them here. So here's depreciation expense account. But as a count at the end, that's the real account number. It's not an index. So I've got a quick sample here. So when I go to just validate that I'm in balance at the end of the month, I can actually see here are my fixed assets. Here is what I think I've assigned as the asset cost, the clearing account, the depreciation expense, and the reserve account. And so I can simply drop this into Excel, run a quick pivot table, and I'm going to be able to see what my accounts, where I think my fixed assets should be compared against my general ledger, make sure that everything landed where it's supposed to go, the folks didn't change stuff on me when I wasn't looking, those kinds of things. All right. Intercompany transfers. So we can actually transfer fixed assets between companies. And that's actually way up here. I only have one company, so I can't activate everything. But essentially what you're doing is we're saying that we're going to pick an asset, and we're going to transfer it. We can do any number of values, like-kind exchange, net book value, etc., treat it as a sale between the companies. We can do partial transfers, and then we say, where do we want this thing to land? And so in the new company, what class do we want it to belong to, etc. Bottom line is when you're done and you actually process a transfer, what it does is it does a retirement on the sending company, and it does a new asset on the receiving company, and it also manages any cash that's exchanged in between those types of things. So it's really cool. I wish I had had that. I used to work for a company where we built assets, and then another one of our companies would consume and use those assets as part of a service business. So it was a challenge to move them back and forth sometimes. All right, vendor default accounts. Let's move into some AP stuff. Not nearly enough people use this, so I really want to show this off. When you set up a vendor, we can set up a default purchasing account. And a lot of people don't use this because they think, oh, well, for a lot of my vendors, I need multiple accounts. Staples is sort of a classic one. When I go to Staples and buy office supplies, they get distributed among different departments, and so one is not enough for me. Well, there's actually 3 levels of default accounts. I can put in an account here, and that's just a true default account. I can also drill back with the 3 dots, and any accounts I list on this page also become a level of defaults. If the box is checked, they show up automatically, and all I need to do is allocate my amount between these, just key it into the different accounts. If I want folks to be able to drill back deeper, those would be the items that are not checked. So it's simplest if I just show you how this works. So here's Ace Travel. When I go to do my distributions, all of those accounts that I had a checkbox next to show up in this window. And so I can say that I want to put $500 here and $300 there. And if I decide that, you know what, the account I really need isn't here, I can still come here and drill back. And what I'm going to get is a list of everything that's on that window, whether the box was checked or not. So this is kind of my next level down of, hey, it might be one of these. And if that still doesn't work, I can always come up here and view all accounts to be able to go and find and pick it. So the idea is to be able to say, this is what we think the preferred accounts are. If it's not one of those, or the most common, if it's not one of those, then this is the preferred accounts. And beyond that, you have the entire chart to be able to pick from. But it helps your AP folks get it right the first time that way. All right. GP 2013 also gives you the ability to reprint AP remittances. So let's take a look here in Inquiry. Actually, I want... All right, so let me go find a document here. Here's a payment. I do drill back on that document number, and I can recreate the check stub. And this one is set to a Word template, so it's going to pop up that way. But this will let you reprint the check stub. This was created prior to GP 2013, so the detail's not on here. But this will let you recreate a check stub. So the vendor says, hey, I got your check, but I don't know what it's for. I lost the stub. Can you resend me what things you were paying? You can actually reprint that check stub and send it off to them. EFT remittances. I'm just going to sort of show you where this is at. This is in the presentation pieces. An awful lot of folks want to do EFT payments. We want to send people money electronically. If you want to do that, I'd like to be on that list. Please feel free to send me money electronically anytime you would like. But we also want to be able to send them remittances and say, this is what we're paying. And ideally, we want that to go out via email so that I don't have to send them paper, because if I send them paper, I'll just send them a check. Well, there's a really straightforward setup to be able to email remittances out of GP when you're doing EFT payments. And essentially, when you create the file to transmit to the bank is when it sends the email. So typically the email has something like, we've transmitted a payment to you today or tomorrow, whatever your typical timing is. The funds should arrive within 3 to 4 business days, and here's what we're paying. Here's the amount, and here's the detail behind what we're paying. So like I said, it's a really straightforward setup, which makes it pretty nice. For those of you who've been using GP for a while, sorry, let me clean up a couple things here. All right. If you've been using GP for a while, you know, one of those sort of oddball features that just sort of never quite made it was the ability to print a 1096. I know, it was just one of those oddball things. So when you're doing a 1099, the transmittal form is a 1096. Well, they fixed that in GP 2013. When you print your 1099s, you simply print the 1096 form from here. On that same note, what happens what happens a lot is that folks start working with a vendor, and they don't realize that it's a 1099 vendor. And midway through the year, they figure out that it's a 1099 vendor, and they need to go fix that. So there's a couple of different ways that you can fix that. So one is in GP 2013, we've got a utility that actually lets you go and you can assign vendors after the fact as 1099 vendors, and it will search through and find all of their transactions, and you can even pick and choose and say, okay, that one was not a 1099 transaction, maybe that was a reimbursement of something, and be able to eliminate individual transactions. If you're using GP 2010 or earlier, there's a professional services tool. It's not quite as sophisticated, but it basically does the same thing. So I'll just at least show you where it's at. And it is the 1099 modifier here. And what it does is it goes out, and anybody you have marked as a 1099 vendor, even after the fact, it goes out and rebuilds those totals for those folks. So whether you're on the latest version or on an older version, you've got that as well. All right. Anybody using Concur? No. Okay. Really fast, in case there are folks on the webinar, Concur is a time and expense, particularly expense reporting and management tool. It's kind of the Cadillac. It's a really nice tool if you can afford the money. There's actually a free connector into GP to be able to bring the stuff straight into GP. So if at some point you're looking at it, no, there's a free connector that lets you just bring that stuff in straight from Concur into your GP info. All right, so that's free as in beer, meaning you don't have to pay for it. All right, cash payments. So in Dynamics GP, and this kind of works both on AR and AP, but let's say that we're doing an AP transaction entry. Oh, look, I have an AP transaction entry. And I decide to say, you know, we actually paid for this transaction entry already. Either we did a wire transfer maybe, or we're just entering it to catch up something else that happened. And I want to show that we paid for this thing with cash. Well, the one thing that's a little odd is the document number is actually cash, which makes it a challenge to find later on because it's always cash. So what we recommend is just in here, whatever you've put in for this document number, just make that the document number here, which is really your payment number, and that just makes it relatively straightforward to find later on. This doesn't impact too many people, but there are certain businesses that end up using this a lot, and so it makes it a whole lot easier to find the pieces. All right, tolerances. So there's a version of this for GP 2010, but 2013 introduced some new things around inventory tolerances. And the idea behind this is, so we used to buy, a company I work for, we used to buy a lot of cable and wire. And the way that they price that is always, it's X number of dollars. So if you say I want 1,000 feet, it's always, the contract is always written plus or minus a certain percentage. So plus or minus 10% or plus or minus 5%. So if I order 1,000 feet and all I've got left on the spool is 998 feet, I'm getting 998 feet and I just got to suck it up for the missing 2. They're not going to start a new spool just to give me the extra 2 feet. They're not required to contractually. So in order to deal with that, what we would really want to do in that scenario is when the 998 feet come in, we would like to close the PO because I'm never going to see those extra 2 feet. Or if they send me 1,003 feet, we'd like to close the PO, and as long as it's within our tolerance settings. So here when I set up an item, on the purchasing side, I can actually say that I'm going to allow an overage and or a shortage tolerance and put in a percentage. And it works exactly that way. As long as what comes in is within the percentage, then the PO will close appropriately, and we don't have to worry about going and cleaning all of that stuff up. Or if it's over, the PO will allow us to over-receive up to the amount of the overage tolerance and won't make us go back and rework our PO from that. All right. This one is important, and if you use this, I'm hoping you'll get it. All right, let's start with this for a second. Three-way match. All right, so I do a purchase order, and I buy some stuff. And it comes in, and I receive it, and I do a receiving transaction and receive those items into inventory. The invoice comes in. Someone makes a mistake. It doesn't get coded through purchasing. Someone just puts it through ordinary AP at that point in time. Microsoft kind of has a process to deal with this. But Microsoft's process assumes that you properly coded the invoice to accrued purchases to clear accrued purchases. Nobody ever does that in the real world. It always gets double expensed. So now I have an expense that went through AP, an expense that came through because I've received this item, and I'm sort of stuck. It's a really simple, straightforward way to deal with this. I helped somebody clean up more than 100 vendors, several thousand issues around this in just a couple of hours. So this process I'm showing you really works. So I come in here to invoice entry, and I simply go to auto invoice, and I grab all of the items that I want. So in this case I've just got one, but it might be 1,000 for this particular vendor. So let me get this out of the way. There we go. Might be 1,000 for particular vendor. It might be thousands of line items. I bring them all in. I don't have any total. Okay, I need a different one. There, $300. What you do is you come into trade discount and you put in $300 here. So now I've cleared this. Nothing is going to go to accounts payable, so I don't have to worry about accidentally double paying the vendor. I've cleared out my accrued purchases because this is going to hit accrued purchases on one side. Oh, it wants a doc. So I'm properly clearing out accrued purchases. And then in my trade discount field, I would put the expense that AP hit, or the expense that this hit, to offset it, because this is a credit side. I've had some folks with thousands of these. What they do is they put all of these in their cleanup to a suspense account, and then they do a journal entry to clear out the duplicates because they've done an analysis of what those items are. So if you do this right, this never comes up. But I've seen a couple of cases where people's AP departments are a bit messy, or they've had a lot of new people going through them, and you can end up with kind of a mess because they just process it as if it's a regular bill that's come through, and they don't go and match it to a purchase order. All right. If anyone has large amounts of inventory, there is a reconciliation tool, meaning this is a maintenance utility in GP that goes and adds up all of the inventory detail and makes sure that all of your quantities are correct. Your total quantities are correct in GP. I had someone who they had a problem with a piece of software that they had written that was integrating with GP. So they knew that they had created their own problem. But it was taking them 24 hours to run this utility, which was a real problem for them. They had hundreds of thousands of items. It was taking them 24 hours to run inventory reconcile. There's a separate inventory reconcile in the professional services tools that is dramatically faster. What it does is it does a first pass to see which items might be incorrect, and then only reconciles and fixes those items. It's right here in Item Reconciler, and it took the reconcile process from 24 hours down to 6, which in their case was significant because they could now run it overnight on a regular basis and not worry about bumping into backups and those kinds of things. All right. Let's talk about accounts receivable write-offs. So when I set up a customer, one of the things I can do with that customer is I can actually control a write-off amount. So here the maximum write-off is set to $25. That's a little high for me. I think we had ours set to $5. So if someone just underpays you a little bit, they underpay you by 38 cents, you're not going to chase the 38 cents. You're just going to make it go away at that point in time. So this would allow an ordinary AR clerk to write it off up to whatever this amount is. Sometimes it might be perfectly legitimate for them to write off a larger amount. There was confusion about a rebate, whatever. We can actually control that even beyond the base with a password. So here in Setup, we can actually say, if we want someone to exceed the maximum write-off, this is the password. So if I try to do a transaction for a write-off that's more than 25 bucks, a box is going to pop up asking for the password. Your folks need to raise their hand and go find the person who has the password to come and approve that transaction. They put in the password and away we go. Something similar is available for sales order processing, and it even can be done based on transaction type. We find folks who say, oh no, I never want anyone to delete an invoice until they realize that folks make genuine mistakes. And so we can say that you're allowed to delete an invoice, but it requires a password. The reality is, as a supervisor, if I'm regularly having to go talk to you because you keep screwing up invoices, that's also another clue for me that we probably need to do some retraining or do something else around that. Something else that GP can do is it can suggest related sales items. And the way this works is if you've ever been to Amazon.com and you say, I want to buy, a gas grill, it's going to recommend, hey, do you want grill tools? Or do you need lighter fluid? Do you need a gas tank? Do you need whatever kinds of things go with it? Well, we can set GP up to suggest related items. It's kind of the first iteration. I know they're working on an iteration to make it a little more automatic. And a couple of other things, but here's the way it works today. When I set up an item, I can actually do suggested items. And here I've said when people buy processors, we think we should also suggest memory to go with it, and we think they should buy 2. And so when I'm on the phone with a customer and they say, I'd like to buy memory, what happens is you get a pop-up box that suggests the other items. So let's see if I can do this. There we go. And so when I tab off of this, I get a box that pops up and says, these are suggested items to go with this. I can check them off or not. It's entirely up to you, and it brings them into the sales order transaction as well. Yeah, no, big numbers. They're a whole lot more fun. When we do demos, we buy Ferraris and things. We don't want to buy mundane stuff, right? All right, Microsoft Word documents. So GP 2013 and 2010 will let you send out reports and other items, invoices, POs, those types of things, as a Microsoft Word document as well as a PO. You have the choice. Here's the thing. So nowadays, anything can open a PO. So can open a PDF file. So, you know, a PDF file isn't necessarily safe from someone opening it up, changing the numbers, and sending it back to you. Just about anything will open it. The way that GP works with Word documents is there's a password protection available, and you can set that to auto-generate. That doesn't prevent people from opening the document. Anybody and their brother can open the document because you've sent them an invoice or you've sent them a purchase order. What they can't do is they can't change the document without the password. If you set this to auto-generate a password, it doesn't even tell you what the password is, because the reality is there's no reason for you to be changing it outside of the system either. So it's truly a more secure document in that standpoint. Folks can open up in Word, they can look at it, they can print it, they can do whatever they want, but they can't change it and resave it. So just to point that out, we have that available also. All right, a couple of quick things here. If you use Integration Manager and you would like to automate some integrations, there's a free tool. It is now free. It was not free forever or always free, called AutoDIM, Auto Dynamics Integration Manager. This is the only tool that I know of that will open Integration Manager, run an integration, and then close down Integration Manager and GP when it's done. So if you're interested in that, let us know and we can get that for you. If you use Project Accounting for anything, there are a set of scripts available for project accounting. These are similar to some of the other tools around. They'll let you change stuff like the contract number, the contract ID, the project number. We just want to make sure that people know that those are available because they don't get populated too much. Business Analyzer is a tool that's available for Dynamics GP. It's available. Business Analyzer reports are really SQL Server Reporting Services reports, and they can show up inside of GP. So I've got one here. This shows whether or not my items are in balance. Yep, there we go. Maybe. It's also available externally. And I'm just going to pull up an image here. What I really like about it is if we click the button up here, it shrinks all of my reports down into this really nice kind of dashboard view. So if you take the reports that already exist in GP, pick the ones you like, and then shrink them down into a dashboard view like this, you have the world's fastest dashboard in terms of building one and making it available for folks. So if you haven't played with Business Analyzer, it's kind of a really cool tool to be able to play with. All right. GP has made a change to how things export to Excel. They're actually working on changing this again and fixing it, but I figured I would mention it because it kind of freaks people out. For many of you who've used GP for a while, when you send something to Excel, it looks like this. So we've got some basic formatting, meaning we have dollar signs and commas and those types of things. They made the change dramatically faster, like 10 times faster. In the process, though, they kind of screwed up the formatting, and it comes in with 5 decimal places. So the reality is you're probably going to clean this up anyway. So for most folks, it's not a huge thing to be able to just grab this and say, no, I really want that to be 2 decimal places. That's all you got to do. But it does sort of freak people out. The GP team knows that it's an issue, and they are working on it. They've promised me a fix. I had 2 of the developers at a table and said, guys, just please fix this. And they went, oh, we can fix that. And so they're working on it. Sometimes, you just got to get their attention. All right. Also, again, this is sort of cool for folks who've been using GP for a while. If I'm working in a smart list, which again, smart list is ad hoc reporting, GP 2013, one of the new features is if I have a report here and I need more information in this window or more room in this window, I can actually hide this pane over to the side and to be able to get more room to be able to play with over here. And then in addition, if I need this to be bigger, I can right-click in this area and be able to say that I want to increase the width or decrease the width, and that sets it wider or narrower. And I know most of you would love to grab and drag this, but it's actually just a control issue with the control that they used in GP. But you can at least do it. Whoa. All right, we got them all at once. Refreshable Excel reports. So there's a set of reports in GP. These are live Excel reports. I will show you one, even though that's not the main focus of what we're doing here. I really want an inventory one. We'll be out of here in just a minute. All right, so let's say that I want to look at inventory. And I really want this to update throughout the day because I'm curious about things that are coming in as back orders and those kinds of things. So I'm just going to grab a quick item quantities here. Connect. All right, so this is live. These are my item numbers, my locations, and quantities. And we could clean this up and make it prettier and all that sort of thing. But what I can also do is come in here to data and look at my connection and say that I want to refresh this connection every 60 minutes. So every time an hour passes, it's going to go out to GP and it's going to bring in the latest data back into my refreshable Excel report. So I know that everything on my report is always less than an hour old because it's refreshing every 60 minutes. Now, if you just need a day to yourself, what you do is you put one of those out here and you tell the execs that you have put out a new dashboard for them to look at, and you set this to update every minute. And they will sit there looking at new information every minute. It probably has no effect on how they manage the business for that day because very few people can make changes that quickly. But if nothing else, you get a little peace and quiet because they're watching the numbers change every minute. Certainly for most things, every half an hour, every 60 minutes tends to be about right. Even once a day isn't bad depending on what you're trying to show. Oh, yeah. If you're using Excel 2013, there's a really cool tool in here called Quick Format. And so if I grab a bunch of info here, I get this box down at the bottom, which is Quick Format. And I say, what happens if I apply data bars to this, or color scales, or icon sets? Maybe I want to chart this thing. What would happen if I did a line chart? What would that look like? And if I like what I'm seeing, I can click the button and it'll make it permanent. I can drop it into the sheet. Or if not, I can just move on to other things. So it's a really quick way to figure out what might be a good visualization as you're working in Excel with data from GP. All right, stored procedures. I don't have a whole lot of time on this, so I'm going to just go really fast. So Dynamics GP has a bunch of stored procedures, and some of them are used for things like creating the historical age trial balance report. A historical age trial balance report means as of a point in time, what did my AR look like? What did my AP look like? So if I received a payment after that point in time, it doesn't show up on the report because the report is as of a point in time. The trick is those are kind of a challenge to get into Excel. Well, because they run as a stored procedure, we can actually run that stored procedure in Excel. And I'll give you a quick example. So here, I have a stored procedure that brings this stuff in. I can set an aging date. So maybe I want to age this as of, let's go way back, 3/1/14. When I tab off, it's going to run that store procedure, and it's going to go out and get the data. It's going to bring it back in here. Here is my actual aging, so I'm going to just refresh my pivot table. And it's going to go change on me. If I then want to set this back to, 4/1/17, when I tab off, it goes and gets the latest information, brings that back into here. I come in here and I do refresh, and it updates my pivot table again. So the idea is, rather than run a report, send it to Excel, format it in Excel, bring it into Excel once, have it run the stored procedure, set up my pivot table, and every month I'm just doing change my date, refresh. And then I've got what the auditors want in a format that they want it in, rather than having to do a big dance to kind of get there. All right, a couple of little pieces of candy. I need to switch off for this one. So Excel 2013 includes, Excel 2013 includes some new things that have been added. This is a free add-in. It's called Power Map. If you can build a pivot table, you can build a Power Map. So I dragged in some GP data, and essentially what I'm just looking at is a document amount, my customer name, the document date, and then I've got up here zip code. So what this is this is my sales for a customer. So if I highlight over this, I actually get a flyout that tells me this is Plaza 1, that's their zip code, that's the document amount over the period of time that we're looking at. Coolest thing is I can actually look at my sales over time. So when I click this, you're going to see a bunch of sales in the Midwest. Vancouver's going to kick off, and then all of our hard work in the Midwest pays off as those things come in. So let's take a quick look. There's my sales, kind of in the Midwest. Vancouver starts to go, as does Minneapolis, St. Paul. And that's how we got to where we are today. So when you look at, you can go all the way down to the street level with this. You can do geocode with this. So I've talked to some folks who run oil rigs in the Gulf. There's no zip codes in the Gulf. They actually need latitude and longitude data. Or if you're Starbucks, you need latitude and longitude data because there's 3 on every corner. But even simplest example, if I'm a mom and pop one-shop restaurant, but I have a loyalty card that tells me where people come from because they've taken a loyalty card that includes their name and address. You can actually plot where people are coming from around your restaurant. So if you have a need for geodata, it's really cool, simple, easy way to do it. All right, we're almost done. Let me wrap these things up here. Microsoft has a free dashboard available. It is a financial dashboard. There's some plumbing to hook up behind it, but the idea is it connects into GP, and it pulls data in, cash flow, financial ratios, some basic financial information, and then checkbook info. So there's a little customization to kind of make it fit for each individual business, but pretty much you can plug it in, and a good chunk of it will just run for you. If you're interested in that, just let us know, and we can certainly help with that. SSRS reports, we talked about kind of the SSRS reports that come with GP. They can actually be run from inside of GP. So I could assign a report to a customer. Here, I can assign a particular accounts due or an age trial balance or any number of reports to a particular customer. I don't know if those are exactly relevant, but anyway. And then when I go to run reports, those are actually the default reports that are available from that customer. And they can be tied so that the SSRS report actually goes and gets the customer number. So you're reporting, if I'm looking at an age historical balance, I'm just looking at one for that customer, not necessarily everybody. All right. If you're setting up new users in Dynamics GP, in security, there's actually a copy access button. So I set up my new employee, and then I come in here and I say copy access, and I say that I want to copy access from a different user, and it will take the user that I'm copying from and apply that access to the new user, access to companies, all of the security settings, everything. So if somebody's leaving or taking a new job and I want someone that looks just like Mary, you can copy the security from Mary and should be able to ensure that it's exactly the same at that point. Two really quick SQL things. Every once in a while we get some technical folks in the audience, so we try to mention that. Or we find some folks who are starting to want to write some basic SQL queries. You can actually line number these. I won't go through because it's fairly deep in there and it's in the presentation how to do it. But typically you'll get, if you write something wrong, you'll get, you got an error on line 4. And if that line is 46, sometimes it's hard to tell what line 46 is. So you can turn on numbers. And then Microsoft also makes available for SQL Server a performance dashboard that just kind of plugs in. So as I've been working here, we see this is what my CPU has been doing as I've been showing these things off. The number of connections that I have going on and that type of information. So if you don't have another tool, there's at least a free tool from Microsoft to keep an eye on the health of your SQL Server. All right, let me wrap a couple of things and then we'll take questions and kind of go from there. If you want more, I think most of you know this by now. I wrote the GP 2010 cookbook, which is really 100 tips like these around stuff inside of GP. And then Ian Grieve and I updated it for GP 2013. So there's versions for each of those. And I also wrote the book Building Dashboards with Dynamics GP 2013 and Excel 2013. So if you're interested in that, all of these are Amazon, Barnes & Noble, that sort of thing. You can go and grab. And then I've got a pre-built sales dashboard for GP that we've got available. If you're interested in that, we're happy to talk about it. And Spikes did some testing on it for me, and I got a thumbs up from the front row, so I'll take that as an endorsement. It's literally like 5 minutes to put in. That was the goal, was to make this the world's simplest kind of starter dashboard to get people playing with it. And then last but not least, again, the detail behind all of this is at dynamicaccounting.net now. That's my personal website. I do all kinds of GP stuff around there. There's a new tip every week. And Jeff will make sure if we've got your name here, he will send it out to you as well. So you won't even have to work for it if you don't want to do that. But if you just want some cool new stuff and hang out with me and learn some GP stuff, you can do it on dynamicaccounting.net too. And I think we're about done. It looks like we survived the webinar. Is that true, Jeff? It seemed like folks made it through? All right. Well, we appreciate you guys being here for our first live, recorded, streamed, everything. We appreciate your patience through kind of the beginning. And free to go, hang out, chat with Jeff, rub his head. He likes that. But thanks, guys, for being here.
So Mark's